Well, what's cool for us, what'd we do last weekend? We didn't record one of these. What'd we do?
Well, we worked on all the technical business of business.
Yeah.
We technified ourselves. I guess put it on the we're on the air. That's it. It's out there, baby.
So we have finally uploaded. Our hosting website, what we upload to, is Spreaker. But we also outsource to Apple Podcasts.
We're everywhere, right?
Spotify,
iHeartRadio,
Google.
You got just like the man says, wherever you get your podcasts.
Yep. Pretty much all the big ones I think we're on.
Yep.
So
one of these days we'll be we'll be found.
Yeah. Yeah. No downloads or views yet, really, except for when we were.
But did you really expect anything?
No, didn't.
And there's a web. There's an email.
There's an email. Yes,
you can join the conversation at conversationtransfer@gmail.com.
Yeah.
So you send your emails, and we'll read your emails.
Yep. As long as they're appropriate and.
They don't violate. Yeah, they don't violate any of the things that get us kicked out of here. So,
yep.
A little chilly in the basement this morning, bud.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like we're right before summer's starting because we're of course ahead. But
June, this is summer. Well, hell, summer starts tomorrow.
It's actually today. Today's summer start.
Okay.
Today's the first day of summer, and it's colder than normal.
And I'm cold in this basement. It's a little chilly.
It's weird.
But it was nice to have that change in the weather. Not that we should be talking about the weather, but anyway, it's a little chilly.
Yeah, which will be nice for working outside.
You had a good week then?
Yeah, I did. Like I said, we did that first episode, and what I was really excited about was this cover art we made.
Yeah,
last week.
That did good. You and your sisters did that, right?
Yes. I have a hard copy here because obviously you scan this up onto the internet when doing the image. And as you can see, we just put text over the different bubbles. We just cut out, drew, and pasted stuff onto this piece of paper and scanned it up. And look at that. It actually looks pretty good.
It does.
Yeah.
So you ready for summer?
Yes. I am ready for summer. Here's why. One word. Camping.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, camping's rocks.
Yep.
It's kind of funny. It's made fun of a lot of by mainstream media. And like your television shows and the things you watch, the characters are always making fun of it. I don't know why.
It's because, a lot can go wrong camping, and there's a lot of free way to make comedy out of that.
Well, I think that we should keep it so that it's our secret, because we don't want people going up and enjoying it like we do, because then you'll get too many people.
Yeah, that's one thing you don't want people, or at least the style we like to do. It's very nice to be out there not on your own, but with your family on your own.
Well, I'll tell you what, getting away from the hustle and bustle, not that we live in a city. I mean, after all, we are in rural Colorado. It's
not as rural as some places. We're pretty close to some.
We hear the traffic
cities.
Noise a little more nowadays out there on 74 because of the increase of the oil field work and stuff that goes on. But as far as city living, you got to understand, it's quite loud. There are sirens and cars racing down the road all the time. There's helicopters flying over all the time. It's pretty noisy to be inside of an urban area, even in a subdivision close to an urban area. And where we live, it's basically a subdivision, but it's a rural subdivision, and it gets quiet. I mean, it's nice compared to the city. But when you go up and you're in the mountains, that's way nicer.
Yeah, because It's almost like the trees act as an air filter too. Have you ever seen the smog that kind of builds up sometimes around here?
Oh,
Just
have I ever?
from cars and fires
And fracking.
and yeah.
Mostly fracking.
Even though right now it's those fires in southern Colorado and Arizona, I think, that are blowing up here.
Oh, yeah, that's the majority of the smoke right now, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's nice because up there, the trees literally act as a filter, and you're way far away from any of that stuff. No poor air quality alerts, nothing.
Oh, you're getting your oxygen straight from the source, baby.
Yeah. And in fact, back in the 1800s, I don't know if this is true, but I heard it in elementary class, and this is funny, I'm remembering it actually, but doctors used to prescribe people with hard breathing problems, lung problems. They didn't know as much respiratory stuff back then, obviously.
Oh, no, yeah.
Because they don't have instruments. They tell them to go to Colorado,
Yeah.
Wyoming, these places where
Dry air.
dry
Yes.
air and
Dry, clean
they said
air.
basically go up to the mountains for a few years and then come back. If you want to come back, of course, some people stayed because it's so great.
You're remembering that, but I believe that was something that was actually done. I mean, people would come up here when they had respiratory problems to get away from the humidity and the dirt of the urban areas.
Yeah, especially in the Industrial Revolution, that was way back.
Right, yeah. Yeah, we're very dry, which is good or bad. And not that we actually shouldn't poster child this because we'll get too many people move here, not like they haven't already.
Yeah. A lot of growth around here.
Oh, tons
There's
of it.
so many subdivisions going up, and
It's
like,
becoming,
when's this going to crash? What's going to happen? I mean, geez, it's crazy. There's tons.
it is the growth around here. Well, this state, after the 2008 crash, this state was the first to enjoy an economic bounce back, and mostly from the energy sector. A lot of fossil fuels to be found under our feet, unfortunately, for those that aren't into it, but it's there, and we boomed back, and with the boom came the folks.
Yep.
And boy, for the longest time, you would go down to Denver, and they're still there, but I mean, it was amazing how soon after the 2008 crash, it was 10, 11, 12. The cranes that build the skyscrapers, there were more cranes, it seemed like, than there were original skyscrapers. And now, you look at the Denver skyline, you can't recognize what it was. If you were a Rip Van Winkle and woke up from 2008, a nice long nap, and were to look at Denver, you wouldn't know where you were if it weren't for the mountains.
Yeah. Do you know what most of those buildings were put up for? Like what companies were using them? What sector?
Mostly the energy and energy support sector.
Wow.
And that's the thing that blew me away. I went out to the oil field in 11.
Yeah.
And
You were there for a while too.
oh, too long. Too long. And the thing was about when I got there, there wasn't the big boom. It wasn't. It was relatively mild. It was calm. You wouldn't see anybody. For example, out there by the Pawnee Buttes,
Yeah.
it's a lot of state land out there, and they started drilling out there. Well, when I first would go out to Pawnee Buttes area, it would be pitch black, and you wouldn't see a soul. You'd be out there for 8 hours, you wouldn't see anybody. And then by the time I left, it was traffic, tons of traffic, and at night in the dark, there were lights everywhere. So it just exploded. And it's not just the oil producers, it's all the support people, the people making pipes, the people fixing broken things, just a ton of support people. And that's all companies that made a lot of money off oil and gas and built their infrastructure downtown Denver.
Yep. And now it's kind of spreading out here too. A lot of the busyness you were talking about. Like you said, you can hear traffic on 74
Well,
now.
those bastards knew what they were doing. They were out there in the sticks, and they were making a big-ass footprint on our state government with all the money they were sending to them, but they were out in the sticks. And once they got the support of the state government, they moved into populated areas, And those of us that live here now don't have a say because they already dumped all that money into our politicians.
Yeah.
It was a wicked game.
Yeah. Like that whole 112 thing, that was crazy.
Well, 112 was that proposition to get them to stay away from the houses and schools and stuff. The thing is you watched what happened with the oil industry here. It went from being way far away from people and making a lot of money for the state, and then they moved it. Now, the funny thing is the oil that's under us is a sweeter grade of oil. You know, crude oil is filthy, right?
Yeah.
That's why it's crude oil. It's full of impurities. And out there, it's very thick. It's very heavy. Now, there's a market for that, but it takes a lot to clean that up.
Yeah.
The oil that's under us, we're closer to the mountains, so I don't know if it's a younger oil or what. And by younger, I mean maybe millions years younger.
Yeah.
But it's cleaner.
Okay. So
it's not as full of impurities.
It's not as filthy.
So refining it is easy. You get more of the high dollar product. Now, the heavy crude, you get more products out of it. You get your plastics and all the stuff that you get from the heavy crude. There's more products to be made from that stuff. But the light crude is the higher profit.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? That's right.
There's your oh, really fact for today.
Your oh, really fact for today.
High profit.
Higher profit products. Gasoline, fuels, energies. And that's what's under the people. So you think that if it wasn't a crooked industry, they would have gone after that first. But you couldn't go after that first because you wouldn't have the infrastructure of being able to manipulate your governments. It's like what's happened in Longmont.
Yeah.
In Boulder. They rose up against the fracking to try and control it.
Yep.
Well, those people are very much, they've got a little more money in that area, so they have a little more ability to
stop it.
Well, I guess to prevent it or to lobby the government, to be down at the Capitol stating their facts. Out here, we have to go to work, so we don't have the time.
They've got bigger city. They're in more of a city atmosphere, whereas we're in more of a rural, townish atmosphere.
Yep. Well, so yeah, if you look at it, logic would have been go after the high profit oil first, but they couldn't do that because they would have been stopped butt cold once they set up fracking out here, because as you can see, it's a high polluting industry.
Because there's
no regulation over those giant compressors. They spew out more diesel particulates than like 1,000 diesel trucks. Diesel trucks driving down the road are regulated.
Yeah.
They've got the giant filters on them.
Sometimes the air coming out is
cleaner than the air going in.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Because of regulation.
Yeah.
These huge compressors and these diesel engines that they're using out there in the oil field, there's no regulation. If you look at a rig being fracked, the smoke, the black smoke, it drives me nuts. But
yeah, you worked there for 8 years, so yeah,
I have a little insider information. But the tricky dick that the oil companies did, and they knew exactly what they're doing, was get out there in the sticks,
make a bunch of money,
get in the politicians' pockets, and then when it came time to come over here where people were, they knew that the people wouldn't be able to stop them because they had the big economic power behind them.
And some of the people support it because they're like, ooh, money. And even though they don't realize that most of that money's not even going to them,
the other thing too is you start hiring all those people.
Yeah.
And now those people's livelihoods
are in this business.
They are in the business. They're stuck. They're making more money than they could make anywhere else.
Just a little more though. There's not like there's not opportunity to grow though.
Exactly.
There's
These
no
guys,
raises.
Trust me. There's no raise. They know what they're doing. They're like, well, let's see, this job over here that's got nothing to do with the oil industry, let's say, and I'm just using a number, that pays $10 an hour. I'll give this guy $12 an hour. Even though I could afford to give him $30 an hour, he's going to get $12 because that way I'm just ahead of the competition.
Yep. But the thing about going to that $10 an hour job is there's room for growth after you've been there, a couple years and you've shown work productivity.
Oh, yeah.
There's raises, there's all that stuff. Whereas in the oil field,
Oh,
How many years were you there? 8, I believe.
almost a decade.
Yeah.
Almost a decade.
Did you ever get a raise?
I wasn't. What I didn't have any sort of raised scale. No. We got more hours. We got a better. The rate did
Was there
increase,
overtime and a half?
But it wasn't. No, it was
Were
none of
those
that.
more hours?
No.
Was there benefits?
No benefits.
Yep.
No. None of
Holidays, vacations?
that. Actually, there were benefits.
What
There-
benefits?
We had our whole family was covered. Medical, the
medical?
entire cost. I didn't have any part of my check was deducted for medical until, hold on, wait a minute, until the majority of the people in this area worked for either directly the oil field or an oil field support, and then that stuff started to disappear because the companies realized that now we've got all the people in this area relying on us, we can start pulling that stuff back. And that's exactly what happened. It was science fiction the way it happened. It was like you don't want to believe it, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
And then you get the support of the people because they're all like, well, you can't put regulations on them because my boss tells me if you pass Proposition 112, I'm going to lose my job. Big fat effing lie.
Yeah.
Big
Can
fat
you
effing
explain
lie.
how that's a lie? Because that was
I will tell you exactly how that's a
Yeah.
lie. If you have a half a brain and you work out the math, not that people couldn't do this, they could do this. Anyone could do this that cared, but briefly. The problem is people tend to believe what they're told.
Yeah.
When it's their
Well, it's your
employer.
boss.
Yes, when it's your boss telling you this. Even though your boss might be blowing smoke up your ass, you tend to believe him. You don't work out the numbers. You go home at night and you go to bed. You get up and you do a hard day's work the next day. But when your boss is being told by his boss and his boss above him a lie, that's what the truth becomes. The lie becomes bullshit. When the only thing that Prop 12 did to the oil companies is force them to reinvest money into oil production.
Basically expanding science and technology to make it so they could stay miles away but drill underneath where they want to.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And the infrastructure that they had spent the last decade into putting together,
Didn't do that.
no, the infrastructure, all those pipes that they spent all that money on was based on old requirements and regulation that they could stick a well up right outside your house.
Yep.
Prop 12 would have forced them to move a half a mile away.
From any housing.
From
That
any
means
building.
when those
Any
diesel,
building at all.
that diesel smoke's flying in the air,
Yep.
you won't turn in your whole house ceiling fan at night and see black crap
Black soot.
accumulate literally over a couple years. It's disgusting up there.
Yep.
And
Dirt doesn't do that.
Yeah,
that's soot from
That's-
diesel engines that make that
don't-
that fill the attic with
when
those
there's a
black
windstorm
particulates.
with bunches of dirt, are you having the windows open?
Yeah, no. No, so where was I? Anyways, they lied, and they told everybody that worked for the oil field, vote no on 112 because you will lose your job.
Yeah.
Bullshit. It actually would have increased jobs. They would have had to hire more people in order to follow those regulations. They would have had to rebuild and adjust their infrastructure, and that would have put more people to work.
Can you explain that? Like, why wouldn't they just move away to, there was lots of people saying they'll just go to Texas.
That is standard operating procedure of drilling for oil is you go to where it's the easiest to get it. Period. You don't go to where it's hard. You go to where it's easy.
So is it easy here?
This is one of the easiest regions from which to gather oil. And it's based on the geography of the ground below us.
Why is that? Is it just thin crust or something?
No, the infrastructure, pipelines.
Yeah.
You can put pipelines in to transport your oil. A lot of production profit is lost in the transportation of oil. Topsoil levels where we live are between, 20 and 30 foot in depth. And to lay a pipe in just clay is real easy.
Yeah.
In places like Pennsylvania, Texas, New Mexico, other places where we are oil rich and have the technology to get to it, the ground, it's bedrock, and you can't lay it. The topsoil is a lot thinner depth.
Yeah.
So in places that there's only a foot or two of topsoil, you can't lay a pipe. So in order to put that infrastructure into place, you're cutting through solid rock. And as you know, if you go outside with your shovel and you start digging in topsoil, you can dig real easy.
Really
now
easy.
go try to dig in solid rock, you can't do it. So ease of transportation makes Colorado one of the best places to drill for oil. Not only is it here in abundance, but ease of transportation. Here, the
So
DJ
they wouldn't have left. They'd be like, well,
no,
this is
they wouldn't have
still too
left. It
easy.
would have been cheaper just to move it
out.
And
the soil's still easy to dig. They
it
can
is.
dig.
It was a big dick wagging thing. That's all it was. It's the freaking asshole oil. And here's the thing: is there's a culture that you're dealing with as well. It is low education
Yeah.
and higher dumbfuckery.
Yeah. Why did you get into this oil thing in the first place? Do you have
Money.
Yeah, money.
Money.
And why didn't you go to Intel or something?
Education.
Education. Exactly.
Yep.
What is your education?
I'm a high school graduate.
Exactly. And I don't recommend high school graduate to anyone because I personally want higher education.
I think everybody needs. Well, you have to have a higher education. If you're
Yeah.
graduating from high school, especially, today, your education is nowhere near being done.
Yep. Especially with the advancement of computer technology, of space exploration, and what we're doing with that airspace up there.
All technologies, all the
that
engineering technology.
Yeah.
I'm not a dummy. I mean, I am a dummy, but I'm not a dummy. I had choices I had to make.
Yep. But the main point I wanted to bring that up is this oil field business is based on people
Getting
getting
lower educated people.
Yep. Mostly out
More
here because
money.
it's rural and they were going to be farmers
Yeah, they
Yeah.
wouldn't have made as much money as farmers
as
either.
a farmer, and then this oil business came in and they were like, oh, we can make more money and I don't have to have this higher education, which I wasn't going to get anyway.
There is a saying,
Which
and-
isn't your story, but
No,
still.
not my story.
Yeah.
But there's a saying out there that they have that they're very proud of. See, that's another thing is you have to increase your personality in other areas. If you don't have education or intelligence, you've got to use things like pride to fill those gaps. And I'm not, obviously, not a sociologist, but there's a saying out in the oil field: oil field trash with oil field cash.
Yeah.
They're low on the social ladder, but high on the economic ladder.
Yeah. How would your conversations with, like, your boss or your work?
Oh, they were the worst. Oh my God, my bosses and my coworkers, they were the worst. I mean, it was like literally talking to kids in elementary school. That's as far as any thought went in their brain. They, it very, very difficult. Now, there's some intelligent guys.
Yeah.
There are.
The engineers that set up those infrastructure,
They're a little short-sighted too sometimes.
sometimes, but they're not, what you could probably have a normal conversation with.
Okay, but let me go back to another saying.
Yeah.
Birds of a feather flock together. When it came time to hiring engineers,
Yep.
they weren't going for the smart ones because the smart ones might question the control that the dumb ones had.
Yeah. You meaning, like, why would we pour tons of diesel smoke into the air?
Or why would we route these pipes this way? It doesn't make sense. There's no ease here. It's the dumb engineers that are working off of, I don't know what their motivations were, but there were a lot of things that were engineered that were wasteful or unproductive. Just frustrating.
Now that you bring up that point, back in my old school, we had a career day. Like, one day of the year would be set out where they'd pick a bunch of careers, you'd pick your top 3, and you'd rotate around classes, and they'd have a bunch of professionals come in that career that they found locally, like a chef. They found a local chef, and he'd come in, or she would come in and talk about, like, what they're doing, how their career is, what they're paid, what they do for a living, blah, blah, blah. And I am very interested in engineering stuff. They didn't have very much on the topic of engineering, but they did have an oil engineer. And I thought this would be really cool. But to tell you the truth, he didn't seem like the brightest dude. This is first impressions, of course. But when he was talking about it, he didn't seem like he had good communication skills. Like, he seemed a little slow.
Well, engineers typically don't.
But I'm just saying, communication skills.
Right.
And then, like, you'd ask him a question about, like, a photo he was showing of some routing pipe next to a well.
Right.
And he'd explain it again in the same fashion, but it, like, wouldn't answer your question, like, why you would do something like that.
Right.
And it was a little, it didn't feel like if you go to Intel, I went to Intel the next time.
Yep.
They were very responsive. Oh, this is why we have, these giant boxes of 5G networks, why we're working on this 5G network for every phone call that comes in, every time someone surfaces the internet. They were very, very specific onto what...
Able to answer a question.
Yeah, what this component does and why it does it, not just this is what it does.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, that's the truth of the matter is they're not hiring the cream of the crop when it comes to engineers. In fact, they are purposely getting the lower end of the class when it comes to their... They cannot be questioned. They cannot be questioned.
What experience do you have based that you can make this assumption or make this conclusion?
I, too, have spoke to people designing tank batteries.
While you were in the oil
While I was there, and I had suggestions to make it more efficient
just
for
because
the trucks. Because I was there. I was in transportation. And they could not understand anything beyond their job of put the pipe in, hook it to the tank. They didn't want to understand how to that if you just put an elbow right here and turn this pipe to head in that direction, when the truck comes in, he's not fighting this turn over here to get to it.
Yeah.
It was another couple steps. No, that they didn't.
So they didn't adapt to location.
The plan was on paper. They could not adapt. Yeah. That's the right term, Hayden. That is perfect. They did not have the ability to adapt beyond the blueprint they were given
to set up those.
That was drawn up based on a cost that they had to work within. Period.
Okay.
And there's a lot of other motivations that go along with it. When I mention cost, there's these bonus motivations that go in. It doesn't make any sense. But if a pumper or a pumper supervisor can save $50 or $100, they get a $1,000 bonus.
Wow.
What is that? That must have something to do with taxes. Because it doesn't make sense. The oil company is going to give this guy $1,000 if he saves $100 or $50.
I heard of my cousin saved the company $60,000 and got barely any bonus for it.
But out there, it doesn't make sense. We were offered those bonuses. Yeah. We were, if I am able to save maintenance cost.
Yeah, on your truck.
Yes, then I would get a bonus that exceeded the cost that I saved.
It's almost like bribery.
I don't know what it is. The cash flow out there does not make sense to me, and it's by lack of my schooling on the entire matter.
Like there's so much economic income extra that they can just...
It has. I'm sure it's got something to do with the government and how they're taxed and how their
tax write-offs or something.
Yes, it's going to have something to do with that. If payroll is separate from equipment when in the tax columns when you have a business. So there is some way they have to spend money in one direction and not in another in order to save money somewhere else. And I'm just not. I don't have those facts in front of me. I deduced that that's the case, though.
Yeah. That's interesting.
No, they're terrible. They're just for the longest time. I'll tell you right now, I could go out there and they sugarcoat everything. They out and out lie about things. They hide their mistakes. Our government says police yourself. We trust you to police yourself.
That's not. That doesn't work. There's corruption
Cheese
everywhere.
and rice. The amount of the way they hid stuff.
Yeah.
Spills.
Yeah.
Terrible. Terrible.
And you're not talking about like the big spills on the coast or anything like that.
I'm talking about, well,
Just-
they're not big spills
No,
like
I'm-
millions of barrels.
Yeah.
But several hundred.
Just out here when you're
Yes, just out
at
there.
wells.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's disgusting. And they came through, the government did get wise, and they put on, and when I say the government, I'm talking about local Colorado state government. They started to police them a little bit on their emissions.
Yeah.
But I don't know how this happened. I don't know where, because like I said, you're talking to a high school graduate, and I can tell you the emissions that are coming from the fracking, from the actual mechanism of fracking, not from the
compressor.
ground, are 50 times the particulates coming off of those things are 50 times larger and more health harmful than the methane that comes out of the wells. The methane that comes out of the wells, it's bad, and it is a what's the global warming gas? It's a greenhouse gas.
It's a greenhouse. Yeah, methane's the worst of them.
It is bad. But when it comes to a health, not as bad as those
Giant, just from view base, they look way worse
the
than
huge particulates that everybody that lives in these areas in and around where they're drilling, and they're drilling everywhere. They're drilling downtown Greeley. They're drilling. There's drills right up next to.
There's drills next to our subdivision.
Yes,
Are you
they're
kidding me?
everywhere.
Yeah.
Those pollutants are way more of a health concern than the ones actually coming out of the ground.
Which they should both be a health concern
Well, they
in the
are.
long run, but
They are, but methane doesn't really have an effect on your health as much as it does in the back end because
directly.
Right. But it does have an effect on the planet, and
it
the
eats your
greenhouse
ozone
gas.
layer.
Yes, so you would think that the state regulators would address both concerns.
Yeah.
When state regulators understand that automobiles,
Yep.
trucks, planes, and all that, their emissions, are regulated because it's bad to have, air pollutants by burning those fossil fuels. So they regulate those.
Just to not take your credibility away, a plane is not an automobile, just so you know.
Transportation.
Yeah.
Where are they with these freaking giant compressors and these engines, giant diesel engines, that are a hell of a lot bigger than anything you'd find on a diesel truck or a car, spewing out tons of particulates? Why aren't there any regulation on those diesel engines? They're
Because-
short-sighted. That's why they see transportation. They see cars. They don't understand that it's the engine inside of those machines that's causing the pollution.
And maybe those representatives that are checking that stuff over, maybe they're corrupt. Are they controlled by the oil company? Where?
Yeah, that's the thing. When I pass judgment, I make a deduction based on why something is, and it comes to a person like that, I go with short-sighted and not corrupt, because corrupt would just be really bad.
Well, it's already corrupt of them moving out into sticks, making a lot of money, and then moving in here and everybody going, okay.
Those are the profiteers at the oil companies. We understand their corruption. It's based
Yeah.
on greed. That's just
You're talking about local corruption.
I'm talking about politicians. I'm talking
yeah.
about the people who write our laws.
Yeah.
State regulators. I don't want to think they're corrupt. I think they got into the business to try and preserve, the environment and human health and safety, and to move forward society in a safe, positive manner. I'd like to believe that that's why they chose that as their career is not the right word, but certainly enough of them are career
Their
politicians.
career, yeah, is fine, I'd say.
So I try to steer away when I'm making a deduction that it's corruption and more just short-sightedness, plain old-fashioned stupidity, or not stupidity, ignorance. Yes, thank you. Plain old-fashioned ignorance. It sucks. Our lives, we're so busy. It's hard to keep track of absolutely everything that's going on. The complexity of our society, which is part of the reason why we're having so much trouble right now in the apocalypse. all of the things that have to be thought about to keep people safe during the pandemic is overwhelming for one person. You really do need a team.
Yeah, just because this whole pandemic has added a whole new set of problems and stress.
Absolutely.
Which, if you want to talk about something oil related, like cars and stuff like that usually we're driving around, here's something that just, it's like a way big, it's a real effect almost. It's basic observation from this pandemic on pollution. So people were given a stay-at-home order, right? There used to be businesses open, cars, all the time everybody's doing something, right? Now everybody's at home. And all of a sudden we have 2006 records of our air quality, and the emissions that are coming off have just disappeared, and it's like we've gone back.
Now you don't be
years.
so short-sighted about your observation. What else has gone?
The oil industry.
They're gone.
Yeah,
there's no drilling. There's no fracking.
Drilling.
There is none of that.
There's
It's
no
totally
fracking.
stopped.
There was no cars driving
Yep.
around there. It's like, oh my gosh, everything cleared up. You wouldn't get these air quality alerts on your phone.
No.
It's just like almost common sense. Like
I
all of a
almost
sudden
wished we
these
kept our-
pollutants are
yes,
gone.
they're gone.
They're
And
gone.
it's blatant.
What happened? Oh yeah, there's a pandemic. We're all staying home.
We're all
and
staying at home.
Nobody's
I almost
fracking.
wish we all still worked and the oil collapsed like it did and they stopped drilling and fracking.
Yeah.
Because then you would see the effect that this fracking has on our air quality. Unfortunately, people stayed at home, and the smart
But it was a
spin
smart thing,
doctors,
but
yes,
yeah.
the spin doctors are able to say, well, it's because there's no cars on the road. But nobody is saying, well, it's because they stopped fracking.
Yeah, which obviously both have a factor. But
Absolutely.
I believe your opinion is
I maintain that it's the fracking that is way worse.
Mostly the fracking.
Absolutely,
that,
because
especially
those
in this
are the
area.
engines. Hayden, those are the engines that aren't filtered.
Yep. Which,
Trucks,
you know,
automobiles
aren't perfectly filtered.
All new modern automobiles have
They're-
catalytic converter, and they
they're good,
recycle
but
all of that stuff.
They do, but they're not perfectly filtered. But they still got a percentage. That's what I'm trying to get at. They still have a percentage.
They do
but
add, yes,
The
but
fracking
yes.
is at least in this area,
At least in Colorado,
is the biggest
we don't have the large population of drivers
of California. Let's say
Exactly,
California,
that's what
and
I'm
yet
saying.
our skies sometimes look exactly
the same. We don't have the population of drivers here, but we have. And then people will say, well, it's topography, it's the lay of the land. Bull freaking crap. We get the winds out of Wyoming. California gets the winds off the ocean. That crap gets blown out.
They've got
of
the
here.
mountains right up there. You
Yep.
can't blame our mountains.
No, they have mountain range that it is.
Especially in Southern California.
That used to be industry down there. Now it is mostly transportation that causes their smog. My opinion.
Yeah.
Here
It's
in
not our
Colorado,
transportation.
it is not our transportation causing our smog.
As
It is
much.
fracking.
Yep.
That's one dumbass's opinion. So
Well, it's just basic observation. Especially you have more knowledge from being in that industry for over.
it's observation based
Almost
on
a
my
decade.
experience, and
Yeah.
and I'll tell you what. One of the things that does get knocked when I am spouting forth an observation is my lack of education.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, when I see kids today and they aren't paying attention or when they're not bothering to put any effort into getting education, it's so important that you get in for education, even if your circumstances require you to get a job right away. You have to find a way to get that education, because you can be a smart kid, but you will have no credibility without a certificate that says that you put in the time. And that's all it really is, up to the point of, I think, a master's degree. I think you can get your bachelor's degree and it is still not an education. I think it's a certificate, because I can go head to head with bachelor's degree folks on any subject. And unless,
And I've witnessed this too.
you know,
It's crazy. It's like,
some of the
wait a
smart
second,
kids-
why aren't you educated? Because you seem I'm not saying you're the smartest dude out there.
I'm not the smartest dude.
And that's something that
I
puts this
lack the
podcast
certification.
a little under, because you're not graduated and I haven't graduated yet. right?
But you've got to
We're
experience.
just putting our experiences, our
Is
observations,
huge.
and
Yes.
our education that we may not have a certificate for yet, for me, hopefully yet, but we're just putting our opinions based off of these observations and what we've learned into what we feel and what we see about things.
It's called real world.
It's just
It's called real world.
Real world
There's
experience.
the book learning, and facts and figures and experience that you can glean from others that have published themselves. All good stuff. It's one of the things that humans get to do is learn from others' mistakes. Not everyone in the animal kingdom gets to do that, but human beings, yay, we do. But practical experience accounts for a huge amount of knowledge.
And the best combination of those things is having that knowledge and your personal experience. 'Cause then you're the better man, I guess. You're the one that can put your real life experiences and your education and formulate your own education and experience based opinions.
Yeah, well, not to blow my own horn, but my diverse background and experience in all the things that I have done allow me to formulate, I believe, a stronger opinion when it comes to any topic, because I'm able to pull from all of those different experiences.
See, but you've had a lifetime to do that.
I have, and and hopefully what books do, and hopefully what school does, is it shrinks down that time by allowing the people in school to learn from the experiences of others.
Learn your history.
Yeah, it shrinks it down. Don't ever forget your history.
And everything, it doesn't have to be history class. Every single class you go to, science, math, that is quite literally history. That is somebody that has written down what they have discovered, what they have formulated. Math, somebody discovered the quadratic formula based on the quadratics that they use. And that's history. Somebody learned that in history, and now we're just learning that history to base our today's life on and improve upon it, right?
Yep.
We're expressing, like you said, those ideas and those thoughts and making them better because we're a species that can do that. And that is very important. It doesn't necessarily have to be history class. Everything is history.
You're right. That makes total sense. Everything is history. A guy that came up with the quadratic equation, it didn't happen this week. It happened a while ago. Yep. And that learning is now passed on to the generations that will come after and the ones that come after that. And they don't have to be relearned unless, the apocalypse wipes us all out.
Which then there's even records, hopefully.
Funny you should mention that. Will there be? We put so much into electronics.
Paper's the most abundant that it's ever been.
Right. What are you saying?
I'm still saying there's record, because even if you don't have, we're hopefully going to expand this technology and still be able to access everything we've done through it. But every single thing you print out, you write on, that is used in historical context.
That's why I always want hard copy of everything.
Which is great. But even that hard copy, even if you don't have a hard copy of everything, there's still tons of hard copies around of somebody writing a grocery shopping list down.
Right.
That is used in historical debates and historical deduction.
A shopping list.
A shopping list. Somebody's diary where they put their shopping list in. It's all used to interpret the way of life during that time period.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm just concerned that things have a tendency to snowball, and stupidity has a way of getting its way. And that the pandemic is the beginning of a trend of humans becoming even more dumb than they are.
Well, you talking about like society breakdown?
Yeah, but not to the point of the end of the world.
Yeah.
Just kind of a hiccup in human growth, and like medieval times.
Yeah.
Didn't that follow a pandemic?
That was during the Black Death, the
Right.
plague.
Yep.
But that was more that was that plague and religion based. It was religion that was the oil field of back then. They kind of were the corrupt. I don't want to call it corrupt because there's a lot of religious people there, but they were the control factor of the common people.
Sure. Yes, exactly. Control factor. That's exactly what it is. It doesn't have to necessarily be religion or big business.
I'm just saying.
But
I'm stating a historical fact of
Sure.
that time.
We have a very similar series of circumstances setting themselves up right now. Now, I realize that COVID-19 is not killing a lot of people, but it's novel COVID-19. It's the novel coronavirus. We're not sure what this thing does. There's speculation all over the place about it. I tend to believe in the science that we've learned to date.
The trends.
Yes, and not trends, but hard science.
Science is based off of trends.
There's a lot in the media that they love to have these pseudoscientists make these grand speculations, and it's all a paranoid, driven, I gotta sell newspaper mentality thing. But what happens is when you're selling that, and it's bullshit because it's not proven. It's just speculation. When you're selling that bullshit, there's a lot of folks that lock onto it, and it literally makes people dumber, not smarter.
A lot of opinion-based things too.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it makes people dumber because, like I said earlier in the show, people don't do the math. They tend to believe the media. They tend to believe their bosses or the higher ups, are leaders that are obviously have an agenda, an underlying agenda when it comes to what their priorities are.
Which is a good point. You should always believe. You should listen to your bosses and your leaders, but you should always formulate your own opinions based on your own experiences.
Always.
Based on whether you agree with your leaders or not. Because it's better to be a free-thinking person. What is this country based off of? Freedom, right?
It is.
Free-thinking person.
Why is education
with similar
free?
interests, yeah.
Education's free because our forefathers, the people, did not want a dumb populace. The forefathers knew that intellectually stimulated population would continue to grow and support the ideals behind freedom. We're the most innovative country in the world because, I believe, our freedoms, because of the Bill of Rights.
We're the most free-thinking, innovative. You may see China doing all this stuff, but they're not.
They're not doing anything. They copy. They steal. They don't do anything.
And then and that's
steal,
just
copy,
because
control.
that's
China.
because they're controlled.
Yep.
They may be making all these things like light computers and stuff. But
they're parroting what has happened in other places,
and they're not having free-thinking innovation.
No, they're subjects, and I use that term, citizens. The subjects of China don't have the ability to be creative because they've been stifled for generations.
It's just their culture almost.
And the ones that break through, here's the real. This is what makes you realize that there is. This is what makes you consider strongly that there is some sort of supernatural evil force at play on our sphere. The ones that do break through, because life has a way of breaking through, to quote Jeff Goldblum.
Life has a way.
Yes.
Life finds a way.
Finds a way. One of the greatest lines. One of the greatest lines. To quote Jeff Goldblum, life finds a way. The ones that do break through in China, they are either they're immediately targeted, they are immediately mauled, manipulated into becoming corrupt and joining the communist ideology. They're given gifts. They're given super good treatment. They are exposed to the high life, if you will.
They disappear.
The ones that have a moral compass do. The other ones become corrupt just like the government.
Which is corruption everywhere, but in that country specifically.
Well, power corrupts and absolute
Yeah.
power corrupts absolutely.
That's why I always call Taiwan the real China.
Yeah, Taiwan is the real China.
It's where they fled when the communists came
Now they're
back.
coming for us, Hayden. There was a program on NPR the other day. Apparently, with all this that's going on in Hong Kong, and there's a situation here recently in the news about the Uyghurs, which are, I guess, Chinese citizens that are Muslims. Where was I going with this? I didn't want to go to the concentration camps. I wanted to go to what was on the radio show. Anyways, there was a group here in the United States of ex-Uyghurs, or they weren't ex-Uyghurs, ex-Chinese patriots, that somehow they were doing, maybe it was a podcast like this or a blog or some sort of internet thing where they were like getting the word out or whatever.
Just talking.
Just doing whatever they in this country.
In this country.
And using this country's technology and the internet. Like,
Their freedom.
China was able to stop them.
How?
That
They're in
wasn't
this
entirely
country.
explained on the program. Just the fact that they had the guy on. He
I wanna
was in
find
fear
this.
for his family's life, and they stopped him. Chinese government was able to censor him. And he was like the leader of this group. What are you typing in there?
I'm just looking. China's new normal? No. I was looking for this article on NPR you were talking.
Type in, go with China sequesters. No, let's use censors American Uyghurs.
How do you spell makers?
I'm not 100% sure. Just Meeker. Placing underwater sensors Pacific near tensions between U.S. and China increased during the latest blow-up. China.
Do you know what date it was?
Oh, it wasn't, but maybe in the last 2 weeks.
So just
You didn't get anything on.
June 12th.
What is that? What does that say? What's that article there?
This one?
Yeah. Battle between U.S. and Chinese telecom. I don't think that is. It Huawei intensifies. That's not it.
No.
No.
No, yeah, that's 5G stuff.
Yeah. Being able to find stuff on the internet's real talent, and I wished I had it. There's so many times when I've wanted to go back and look at something, and
Yeah.
I cannot find it. I almost think it's the way that... You know, there were laws passed here in the United States. I shouldn't say passed. Laws revoked or that were changed that made it so that internet providers didn't have to provide us with everything on the internet, only what things related to what we've already looked at.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just so you know, it's bad and only seemed to be getting worse. So
Yeah. But that surprises me about that whole blocked and... Cause how could they...
that's the thing, is they weren't 100% clear on what they did. And I remember that. Shoot, I should have wrote this down. I remember when I listened to that
I could see them blocking...
that story. I was like, this needs to be a podcast. We need to talk about.
We should do that. We'll write that down for later.
Yeah, let's write down a topic of censorship. We'll go over that in another podcast. But yeah, do a little research on it and talk about it, because you think you got freedom of speech in the United States? Guess again, folks.
I don't get that. Like, was it censored in China or was it censored here as well?
They made it sound like they were able to stop him here.
Wow, that's just...
Yeah. And
We'll have to look into that.
Yeah, we'll look into that for that censorship podcast.
Yeah.
We'll do that for sure.
Yeah. That's just crazy to me. That's... Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm looking at your podcast overview that you wrote down here, and we haven't touched on any of it.
No. So if you guys didn't know, listeners, we did like a freestyle today. We didn't... Usually I'll write an overview down.
Freestyle.
Yeah. Usually I'll write an overview down about a specific topic we come up during the week before. But this week, you decided... I'm not one for freestyling. It's been fine. But
I just wanted to give it a shot. I
Yeah.
love these overviews, Hayden.
Yeah.
I do. I just wanted to give it a shot and see how it flowed because
And
I think that
I think it went fine.
honest, speaking from the heart, off
Yeah.
the cusp, I think that's a very important
I
thing
didn't
to
know
be
we'd
able
go
to do.
oil based or
No, I mean
freedom
it
of
just
speech or
happened to
anything.
go
It
that
just
way. You've got
happened.
some good stuff down
Yeah.
here. You wrote down the
Which we can
virtual
use.
meetings
We
and-
can use later. So
Yeah.
this will be like freestyle number 1. This was not planned as a topic at all.
Yeah, not
just-
bad.
Yeah, it went very well, I believe.
You don't
So-
want to talk about your experience redoing our dining room table, huh?
Do you want to do that real fast? We got a little time. We can.
We got all the time in the world, baby.
We got. We'll just go over it real fast. This week, actually, I finished.
It's been more than a week. It's been
This
like
week I
3
finished.
weeks. It's driving me crazy.
No, it's been actually 5.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's been crazy.
Okay.
This week I finished. Brought them in yesterday. Which when I say there was more than just me working. I worked
all
on it
worked
the
on it.
most.
Right.
But my mother helped a lot with sanding. So did my 2 sisters.
Younger sisters.
Younger sisters, yep. And my mother also helped a lot with the staining. I did most of the sanding with like the orbital sander, and I did a lot of the staining. I did half the staining too, and I did most of the polyurethane, which is the protective coat that you put out. But we just got back in our dining room table.
Yep.
Yeah, so what we did 5 weeks ago, right on that last week of school, we took out the table,
Yep.
sanded it all down, started with 60 grit, and then went to 120, 220, 500 to make it nice and smooth. And you got to understand, when the table's put together, it's really hard, the table and chairs, because when they do it at the factory, they're all in pieces. It's really
Right.
easy to sand.
Yep.
Now they're together, so you can't get everywhere with the orbital sander, which is
Right.
the easier method. You have to get hand places, which is really hard. That's what my sisters and mom did.
God, gave them the hard stuff.
Yeah, well, yeah, I did. But sanded it all down to that. Clean it with some mineral spirits. Put some wood conditioner on. Put some stain on. Which you do want to use wood conditioner because apparently it gets blotchy
What do
if
you
you
mean?
don't. As in, some places will be darker and some will be lighter.
And that's because of wood conditioner not being used?
Not
What is
being
wood
used.
conditioner?
Wood conditioner, can be picked up at Lowe's, Home Depot. It's basically a coat you put over the wood that'll make it so the stain will spread out more evenly.
Really?
So, if you didn't put it on, a gash that you put in with the sander maybe that you didn't see would be darker than everywhere else, right?
Right.
But if you put conditioner on, it supposedly makes it so it's more evenly distributed. So it's the same color all the way through.
You see, we stain the doors
Yeah.
and all the trim
Yep.
down here,
Yep.
and I don't see any blotches. We didn't use wood conditioner.
Well, did you sand them?
No.
No. There you go.
Factory sanded them.
Yeah.
Ready to stain.
Yeah. They were probably more evenly sanded. When you're sanding yourself, there's a lot more human error.
Sure.
And,
those-
Yeah.
you get those
and
pressure
it all
plate
depends on type of wood too, because the stain's not going to look the same on every type of wood. When you see that color on the bottle, that is just that's the guidance to what you're most likely going to have it look similar to.
Yeah, the table's a lot lighter than the was originally.
Yeah,
It was
which
very dark originally.
I messed up on the stain color, but Mom likes the lighter anyway. I said red mahogany. It should have been dark walnut.
Ah.
So that color is not the same.
No,
as
it
I
looks great.
It looks good.
Suits the decor of the
So
kitchen.
after you sand, you stain. I like to use a rag. You can use a brush, but I like to use a rag.
Yep.
It's more evenly distributed.
When
You
we
go
stain
with the
doors,
grain,
we
with the
use
grain,
rag, yep.
and then when you apply polyurethane after you've had a few coats of that. You apply. You don't want the triple thick stuff. Here's
No.
why. The triple thick does not work. They say, oh, you can do all 3 coats in one coat. It makes it so it dries too fast and you see brush strokes everywhere.
I
We
see.
tried the triple thick stuff
Yes,
first,
yes.
which we accidentally got water-based too. You do not want to use water-based.
Oh.
Only use oil-based and oil-based.
Water and oil don't
Yep,
mix.
they do not mix. We had to sand that off. Not stained, but I lightly sanded with some 220 grit
Yeah.
to but there's still brush strokes that you can see sometimes if you look right. just because that undercoat really screwed it up. Do not use triple thick. I like Minwax, either gloss or semi-gloss polyurethane. The thin stuff, it can be fast drying. Fast drying's fine. But the thin stuff applies way easier, and after you've brush stroked it, it actually, because it's so liquidy, it'll settle down.
Fills in the valleys of the brush, sure.
And the brush strokes will disappear.
Yep.
So, in between coats of polyurethane, you just lightly sand with 220 grit and wipe it off with some mineral spirits and put another coat down.
Why did it take so long?
Because sanding takes forever because of those different grits and all the hand stuff that needed to be done.
Oh, sure.
Because it's very hard, difficult.
Yep.
The stain was fine. That process was actually pretty easily.
When you stain it, so you put a coat of stain on and it's a
Yeah.
certain color. If you put another coat, does it get darker?
Yeah, you can put darker stain on, but not lighter.
But if you have the same color stain,
Yes, it does
So-
get a little darker.
and then the next time would it get even darker, or does it get to a point
It
where it
gets to
doesn't
a point
get?
to where it doesn't really get as darker. It's like exponentially decreasing.
Oh, okay.
Like first stain, it's light. Second stain, it gets really dark. Third stain, it gets a little bit darker. Fourth, it's kind of stays the same, but you can still tell it got a little darker. It gets slower.
It finds an equilibrium or whatever. It finds a place where
it doesn't get as dark. But if you want a lighter color, obviously don't put as many coats down.
Right.
But you do not want to just put one coat on because that'll come off very easily.
Yeah.
Polyurethane, you at least want 3 coats.
Sure. That's your protective cover.
That's a protective cover. And just scrape off any drips in between.
Yeah, I saw your job and I'm like, oh Lord, if they ever have to do this again.
Yeah, Mom said she's not doing it again, but she said next time. She said next time you're giving the table to the kids when they move out, and you're
Lord.
buying a new one,
Gotcha.
and I'll have to be doing it again.
Oh no, yeah, yep. Well, make sure you've got the tools of the trade, because the little sander that gets in there and the crevices and the orbital sander,
Yes.
you definitely need that stuff. Because if you were to have done that by hand completely.
Oh,
I don't know. Maybe you'd be big old buff guy, but I just think you'd have a lot of sore muscles and fingers.
Yeah, no, it's almost impossible to do by hand. It's crazy.
Well, it looks pretty decent.
Yeah,
I mean, you can
There's
tell
that mess up from the water-based stuff, but
Yeah, and you're going to do that coffee table next, huh?
just the top of it,
Yep.
which is a little different color, and we're going to use the right polyurethane this time.
Yep.
And we'll properly apply wood conditioner too. So it will be learning experience. Last time, it's going to be used a lot,
Right.
So it shouldn't matter.
Definitely.
But
Well, that table had wore out from
10
years ago
yeah.
when we got that table. It's just, you kids are so tough on things. They're little breakers.
Hey, your place wasn't so clean, wasn't so stained clean either. So
What do you mean?
meaning it had a lot of scratches and stuff too. So I mean,
Only because you guys would lean over and scratch my area up.
oh yeah.
Pretty sure that thing,
No.
somebody drew that thing over there.
Even the guest spot, which nobody rarely sits there. We have a
Yeah.
6-people table.
Yeah.
There's only 5 of us. It still had scratches all over it. So,
Not from me or the guests.
hey, our neighbor said he's done his table 4 times or 3 times over it, and he's had it for 40 years. So,
Yeah, well, our neighbor put his head through the table too, so that would just go to be that. So,
well,
anyways, I guess we can wrap her up. Thank you
Yeah.
for listening to this episode. Conversation Transfer. If you want to join the conversation, email us at conversationtransfer@gmail.com.
if you like this episode, you could try more on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, or on our hosting website, Spreaker. Stay safe, keep thinking, and keep talking.